that gospel out, and they're going to hell if they don't hear it and get saved. And so if we don't warn people, it's immoral for us not to warn people. It's immoral for us not to warn people that are lost, that they're going to hell and that they're in trouble. So that's why we've got to get involved in it. In fact, you look in the New Testament, that's what it's saying. In the Old Testament, well, you know, God was pretty hard on people, but the Apostle Paul took it that personally. In fact, the last time he gathered the Ephesian elders together, where he had this great revival. I mean, you remember that, don't you? In Ephesus, that's a place that the whole province was turned to the Lord, and they were putting the idol makers out of business. This is the last time he said, I'm not going to see your faces anymore. He said, but I want to bring you to record this day, that I want you to remember that I cease not to warn every man night and day with tears. I warned people night and day. Warned them. You know, when you warn somebody, you don't warn them about something good, you warn them about something bad. So that negative side of the gospel is definitely a part of it. He said, I want you to bear record that I cease not the whole time I was with you to warn people day and night. And you know what he said? He says, I am free from the blood of all men. That's what he said. Their blood's not on my hands because I did what I could to help people hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. In fact, he went to Corinth, and the people turned against him in one place, and they were saying, we don't want this, we don't want this. And Paul stood in front of them and he said, well, you can do whatever you want, but he says, your blood's on you, not me. He said, I did my part. My part is to share the gospel. Listen, the majority of people are not going to respond to the gospel. They're going to say no to the gospel. That's just a fact, because straight is the gate, narrow is the way to lead to life, and few there be that find it. But I can't stop because the majority are not going to respond. My job is to tell the message. My job is to share the gospel. We've got to be involved in some way, locally, worldwide, of getting this word out to the world and investing our time and our money, our energy, our lives into getting that gospel out, because it's our responsibility. You know, to whom much is given, much is required. I'm glad I heard about Jesus, but when I heard about Jesus, there became a responsibility to tell people about Jesus. He left you here in this world to get involved in that work of and not just warning people, because the gospel is not just about warning people about hell. It's about telling people they can have eternal life. Not just live forever, but live forever as a citizen in God's kingdom, becoming a member of God's family, an heir of the Creator and owner of the universe, in fullness of joy and pleasures evermore. Now, we talk about heaven, we sing about heaven, we think about heaven, but I'm going to ask you something, because this is a reality. Your faith has to be real. Do you really believe that there's eternal life waiting for you? I mean, you have to believe that when you go through struggles, because the temporary things will drive you crazy. But if I believe in that there's billions and billions and billions of years out there, and we've not even begun, even when the billions of years pass by. And it's fullness of joy, pleasures evermore, no more sorrow, no more suffering, no more pain, billions of years. Our life in this world is just a puff of steam. And the only way to have that is by hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ and believing it and receiving it. Do you believe that? That's how you got saved. That's one of the things that drew you to being saved, is God's offer of everlasting life. It's like a king inviting you, Jesus said, to be a part of a great feast. And He's commissioned us to go to the world and tell people about this, to tell people the good news. You can have everlasting life. You understand, when you grasp that and really realize that I have in my pocket, I have in my pocket, I blew my mind back to a time when I was sitting in a Hardee's one time when I was young, and this Hindu guy comes in, and he's got this robe on, and he said, do you know what I have behind my back? No. The largest piece of gum in the world. Now, got a big old long piece of like double mint gum. And he was wanting me to give him money for his largest piece of gum in the world. In our pockets, we have everlasting life. He's excited about his piece of gum. You know? And we have everlasting life. Jesus calls it the pearl of great price. He calls it the treasure that's worth you giving up everything for. I mean, really, if we believe, you know, Paul believed that. He believed that so much, he said, people look at me and they say, look at that poor man, he's not got anything. He said, but he said, I go everywhere making many people rich. They say, he's got nothing. Oh, I've got something. Silver and gold have I none, Peter said, but I got something. You have the key to everlasting life. And to keep that to yourself is just immoral. You have the way for people to live forever. In the story that I read you a moment ago, let me give you a little background and we'll close with talking about what this story is about. The Syrian army had invaded the northern kingdom of Israel and they had surrounded it. They besieged it. They weren't letting anybody in, they weren't letting anybody out, they weren't letting any supplies in or out. And so the famine broke out in the city. It broke out so bad. Let me tell you what the Bible describes. This is where it reached its head, its pinnacle. This woman comes to the king and complains. She says, I've got a friend of mine, another woman, she said, we both have small children. And she said, the famine was so bad, she said, we made an agreement with each other, said, listen, we're going to starve to death if we don't do something. So I said, today we'll eat my baby, and that way we can survive, and then tomorrow we'll eat your baby. And that's how bad the famine was. The kids are going to die. I guess in their minds they think the children's going to die anyway, so I'll eat my children. Crazy thinking, but that's what happened. She's telling the king this, and it said, we ate my baby. And said, I went to that lady and said, okay, it's time to eat your baby, and she hid her baby. And the king, instead of deciding which one of these ladies was right, he just got so angry at the situation. Where is God in all of this? I've got women eating their children. And so he threatened Elisha. Elisha said, I'm telling you, this famine's about to end. God's going to end this famine. Tomorrow, he said, there's going to be so much here, you're not even going to know what to do with all of it. And so this one guy, he threatened Elisha. He's going, I'm going to kill you. So Elisha said, well, you know, just because of the way you're acting, he says, it'll happen tomorrow, but you won't be alive to see it. And the guy died. But anyway, outside the gates of the city of Samaria, there's these four guys, or these men with leprosy. And their body's eaten up, and they won't let them inside because they think they're contagious. They won't let them in where they're eating babies. That's how bad their situation was. They couldn't even get into the famine city. And on the other side was the Syrians who hated the Israelites and would have killed them if they went there. So they said, what are we going to do? If we sit here, we're going to die. So they said, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's go to the Syrians and we'll ask them to, have mercy on us. And if they kill us, all they can do is kill us. I mean, we've reached the bottom. All they can do is kill us. And maybe they might have mercy on us and give us a plate of food. And so they got up and went, and when they went up and went, God made this thing happen where the Syrians thought an army was coming. And they got so scared, they started running for their lives and left everything. They left their horses, they left their livestock, they left their food, they left their extra raiment, they left their money, they left everything. And when the lepers get there, here's this camp of the Syrians, and everything's quiet. Hey! Just a minute. Hello? They got any food you can spare? No answer. They go to the first tent and they look inside, and there's nobody there. They walk inside, and there's gold and silver there, and clothes there, and food there, and they sit down and they're just stuffing themselves with the food. And they're grabbing that gold and grabbing that silver, and they're grabbing as much as they can, and they took it and said, let's go hide it. And they go out and they run somewhere, and they dig a hole, and they bury it, and they bury the gold and silver. And then they go to the next tent and say, oh, there's more here, and they go and grab some more of the gold, and they go to the silver. I can imagine them grabbing a big old leg of chicken, and they're eating away, and they grab it, and they go outside, and they bury it. And then one of them said, listen, this is a day of good tidings. And all those people in there, I know they've treated us bad, but they're starving to death. If we keep this to ourselves, something bad's going to happen to us. We better go tell them what's happened. So they go to the gate and they holler up at the guard and say, hey, we just went to the Syrian camp, they've left. And they left everything there. And they go and tell the king, and the king says it's a trap. They're waiting for us to go outside. When we come outside, they're going to kill us all. Couldn't believe that it had happened, just like Elisha said it was going to happen. Day before they had nothing. And they go, finally they realize, they step out. They go in and they realize it's the truth. They've abandoned all of this stuff. And the famine was over and they had more than enough, more than what they needed to survive. But what those lepers said was, this is a day of glad tidings. You know that's what the gospel is. It's the good news. If I keep this to myself and I don't share it with somebody else, something bad's going to happen to me. I've got to share it with somebody. If I believe that I have the pearl of great price and I know how to get to heaven, I know how to live forever. That's an awful thing for me not to share that with somebody. Folks, we have no choice but to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. You've got to get involved. You being here today, that's great. Do as much as you can to get involved in the work of God as you can, because the more you do in God's evangelistic work, the more treasures you lay up in heaven. This is your opportunity to grab a hold and do as much as you can. Don't ever look at and I'm telling you, this has transformed the way I think about offerings. Don't ever look at it as, another offering. I went to a church, I'll erase this part. Went to a church, they took up 4 offerings in an hour and a half. 4 offerings. I'm finally thinking, man, Lord, I'm running out of money here. Didn't know you were going to take 4. But you don't look at it and say, man, I can't give. I'm so tired of giving. If you really believe what you say you believe, and then when you give to a missionary in the name of a missionary, you'll receive a missionary's reward. It changes the way you look at things. This is your opportunity to do something that has eternal value. Do something that has eternal value. Get involved in the work of the Lord. I'd like everyone to stand if you would.